Hello, and welcome to the podcast Wellness Matters for Direct Support. This is a podcast developed by the University of Minnesota's Institute on Community Integration. Wellness Matters for Direct Support will focus on the importance of health, wellness, and self-care for direct support workers. I'm Mark Olson, one of your hosts, and I have to acknowledge that our friend Cheddar, who is usually co-hosting with me, is off doing a wellness thing right now. She'll be back with us for the next broadcast, so I look forward to having her back shortly. Today we have Linda Lottie Anderson. She's our PI on this project, which stands for Projects Investigator, which is a weird term that we use in research that really is just that she's the head person. She's going to share with us a little bit about why and what we're doing with this, but then also we'll get into some very specific topics around flourishing and wellness and those things and how they're kind of the same and different in a way. So what I'd like to do is introduce Linda. Linda, welcome.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and why this is important to you?
Sure. I was a direct support professional, one of my first jobs, and did that for quite a while. I worked in providing residential supports to individuals with intellectual disabilities back in the days when all services were ICFs, intermediate care facilities. There was no community support services at that time. We were live-ins back also in those old days. They used to be house parents. And so we lived in a house with 6 adults who had an intellectual disability. We shared the house together. And we did that for 4 years. And then I worked as a frontline supervisor, and I worked as a project director, and I worked as a case manager. So I've spent a lot of time providing supports to people in some manner or another. I'm interested in wellness and direct support workers because it's a tough job. I remember stretches of time where we didn't have relief staff on weekends, and we worked months without a break. It can be a lot of stress and burnout if we don't take care of ourselves. And so that is really why I'm interested in this project and this podcast, that hopefully our personal experience and our knowledge of the research and the work that we do, we can share some practical information for people. I'm also interested in wellness for people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. They experience health disparities, poor health outcomes because of poor access and other things to health care. And so that's also been a part of my work here at the University of Minnesota.
So on that, before we get into the actual meat of what we're going to discuss today, I thought it would be really interesting for you to just share. When you were working specifically on wellness for folks with disabilities, you worked with, was it the ARC or was it ACL, or who was it that you worked with to kind of come up with a little curriculum on wellness?
Yep. So that was a project that was funded by, it's called the National Institutes of Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. It's a very big mouthful. But they gave us funding to develop a curriculum, a wellness program for adults with intellectual disabilities. And we decided that social support is an important part of being well. And so the project was designed that an individual with disability and a person of their choice would go through this program together. So it's called Partnerships in Wellness. And so all of the activities were done as a pair. All of the weekly assignments and everything else was done as a pair, and the idea was that they would work and support each other in making changes in their lifestyle and daily habits that they themselves chose. And so it was an 8-week program, and we focused on nutrition and physical activity and social support and relationships and other aspects related to taking care of ourselves, like managing stress.
So what I'm hearing there is that you have a lot of background and you have a lot of desire to make sure that people are taking care of themselves. Let's get into the overarching questions that we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to just start and ask you, what is wellness?
The Global Wellness Institute defines wellness as the active pursuit of activities, choices, and lifestyles that lead to a state of holistic health. So that's sort of the official definition. But it really is an active process that includes the choices we make, the things that we do, and then it addresses things more than just our physical health. So sometimes we think if we're not sick, then we're well, but this is much more broader than just our physical health. And it usually includes things like our physical health, our mental health, emotional, financial, spiritual, social, environmental, and our intellectual or vocational well-being. And vocational there can mean more than our job that we get paid for. It's things that we choose to do, how we spend our time, that are important to us and give our life meaning and purpose. And so it's vocation in a broader sense than just the job I go to.
So, case in point, I'll turn it to myself for a moment,
sure.
in that when I'm not doing my work here,
Right.
I enjoy spending time doing theater, improvisational comedy, things like that. And those would be considered wellness because they are that vocational piece that's not a paid vocational piece, but it's one of those things I choose to do that fulfills me.
Right, and it's giving your life meaning and purpose, and it's something that you love to do. Absolutely.
And DSPs really need to work on this, I would expect, because oftentimes, I know, and you spoke of it, DSPs, and in my experience as well, you end up working such long hours that you don't find those things as quickly and as easily as you possibly can. So, all right. What are some criticisms of the wellness movement?
Sure. The wellness movement has some challenges. Number one is that it has a real focus, I think, on one of the main criticisms of the wellness movement is that it really does set unrealistic expectations for people. If you look at the images that come with like wellness messages, and you hear like what you're supposed to be doing to be well, it's not always realistic for people, and then people can feel like it's unattainable. And so if you really love going to gym and lifting weights for 3 hours a day, and that's really makes you happy, that's awesome, you should do that. But that's not what we have to do in terms of, like, for example, physical activity. It's not always evidence-based, so you can get a lot of information in the wellness world that really has no standing behind it other than somebody dreamed it up and thinks it works for them. And so that is other criticism of wellness. And then the other thing, there's two other things that the wellness movement has some issues with being ableist, and that almost by definition of how people think about it is that if you have a disability, you can't also be well, which is not true at all. And there's a somewhat classist base to it too. The sort of the things that people tell you that you have to do to be well. You can only eat, fresh organic food, or you can only you have to go belong to this expensive gym with all this fancy equipment. Can make it seem unattainable for people. And none of that is true. Frozen vegetables are inexpensive and nutritious, so you don't have to have the organic. And if you like organic food and you can afford organic food and you can support organic farmers, that's great for the environment. Do it, but it shouldn't be a barrier to thinking about how you take care of yourself at all. I kind of like to think about a different term that's starting to be used much more often, and it started in the mental health world. And I think it fits better with sort of the person-centered thinking about health and just sort of being person-centered and for ourselves and for the people we support. And that is flourishing. And flourishing really means that we are living a happy or a good life as we define it. So we all have different values and different things that matter to us. We all start from different places. And if we're able to do things that make us feel like we're having a good life, then that's what's important. And so it encompasses like activities, and feelings and thoughts and relationships that make us feel happy and whole.
For those that haven't heard about person-centered thinking or person-centered processes, I'm going to take just a moment to kind of give a quick explanation of how I view that as someone who trains direct support folks in person-centered thinking. It really is about the balance of what's important to a person with what's important for a person. Now, many of the things that we talk about when we think of wellness per se would be those important four items. So, health and safety and taking your medications, doing a certain amount of exercise, those things. But in order to make those things happen for folks, you really need to balance that with what is important to them. And oftentimes what's important to a person is what's going to drive being able to do that. So you might have somebody who does not really care to go to the gym to do their exercise, but they do like to walk. Well, finding a way for them to walk and maybe meet people to walk with, those types of things, would be balancing that important to them, which is that walking and something that is an exercise that they'll enjoy, with what's important for them, and that is just getting the exercise. So just that balance is what's important, and there's a lot of literature on person-centered thinking out there. You can certainly, I'm going to give the email address that we have. If you have questions further about that, please ping the email address, and we'll get back to you about that. But all right, back to flourishing, Linda.
Sure. While we're talking about email addresses, I also want to just give out a website that has good information about wellness, and it's the SAMHSA website, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration of the federal government. And the website address is samhsa.gov. And so if you go there and search, they have a lot of really good information about wellness and the wellness wheel, and it's a great place to get more information if you're interested in that.
That's wonderful that you bring that up, Linda. So what's the difference between wellness and flourishing?
So I think wellness, they overlap somewhat, but I think wellness sometimes feels a bit more prescribed to me. So, and this is my personal thought, how I think about it, in that there's guidelines. For example, you should exercise 150 minutes a week from the CDC, or there's this and that. And I think wellness has taken on an air of something that to be really well, it's almost, you have to be very driven and perfect, and it's sort of this pursuit of perfection of some ideal that's out there, and it feels very external to me. And I just base that not on research or anything, but really on what the wellness industry has become. If you look at images, if you listen to influencers, if you read books and articles by people who aren't doing research, but this is sort of their personal opinion, that there's a lot of messages about you should never eat meat, or you should only eat meat, or you have to drink your body weight in water, or there's a lot of messages and sort of myths out there about what it means to be healthy, that it's unfortunate to have come into the wellness industry and the wellness concept, because it didn't start that way, but that's sort of where it's taken, and I suppose that's what happens. And maybe someday in the future, flourishing will also be there. But
well, and I look at it as there's a media piece to it, and a sales piece to it that has come in place.
Absolutely.
And of course, what do they want to sell? They want to sell that woman that's really healthy, in the almost the size 0, or the endomorphic man with the big muscles and all of that. Yeah. And so those are the images that often are equated with wellness. Yeah. When wellness is much more than just those physical attributes. In fact, for most of us, the majority of us, it's not that.
It's not that.
You can be well, and you can be any shape, any size. Yep. You can have any kind of pursuit, and you find your wellness in you.
Exactly.
So, all right. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I like flourishing, because it really sort of takes it back to how we define a good life and what makes us feel happy and whole, outside of the external pressures of how we're supposed to be.
For you, and I'll share as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
What does wellness look like for you?
Sure. For me, the ways that I take care of myself and pursue wellness is I exercise almost every day, and I try and meet the CDC guidelines because I have a background in public health. but I do strength training because maintaining our getting of an age, we're concerned about muscle loss and bone loss is a thing. So I do strength training to make sure I'm maintaining my muscle mass and bones. I also find nature very important to my wellness. So I like hiking, and I spend as much time outside as I possibly can. I have taken up art as I'm not good at it, but it's a stress reliever and a way to be mindful and just focus on something in the present and not worry about what else is going on in life. I eat lots of vegetables to make my gut healthy and happy. I also struggle, frankly, with my weight, and I spend a lot of time trying to improve my nutritional input. And then my family's really important to me too. Is another aspect of thing that helps me feel well, to make sure I'm stay connected with my family. So.
All right. So now I promised that I'd share.
Yeah, all right.
So I'll share a little bit about my wellness journey. All right. One of the things for me is that at the age of 46, I had a heart attack. And so that, made wellness even more of an important thing to me. But for me, it involves some of the exercise and eating better, and I'm still struggling with both of those things pretty regularly. But what I found was really important for me was de-stressing. And that was one of the wellness journey pieces that helped me flourish. And so to de-stress, I let go of some things that I had seen as, where I wanted to be in life, and said, I want to do some things that I enjoy and have fun. That led me to doing theater, to doing improvisational comedy, to doing things that just fulfill me more, so that my avocational time, my time off from work, became much more fun. I, too, love the outdoors. I, too, love my family and drawn to my family. And then the other thing that really kind of completes me is my pets.
Yes.
And for some people, that's a thing. For others, it might not be.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I asked that question, and I shared as well, Linda, is that this is that person-centeredness we're talking about applied. We each have a completely different walk in what wellness is for us. But that's that wellness. That's how we flourish.
Right.
And then we can be healthier because of it. So, all right.
Yeah.
So maybe this next question I just answered, but I'm going to still ask it.
Yeah.
How do we know when we are flourishing?
Well, I think I'm gonna take that to how do we know when we're stressed or experiencing burnout? So signs of stress can be our brains don't function as well, so we might have a hard time making decisions. We might be forgetful. We might be angry or irritable a lot. We might have insomnia. That's I know I'm stressed is because I stay awake all night and my brain spins out all the horrible stories that could possibly happen. We're just generally not taking care of ourselves, and burnout is stress that's just gone to another level where we've become apathetic and we just don't care and we're just sort of lost interest in life. And so if you're feeling that way, you're probably not flourishing. So flourishing, if we're flourishing, we feel pretty content that having a wide range of emotions is a typical normal human response. So there will be days that we don't feel great, we don't feel happy, but that's as long as it's temporary and it goes away and it's just part of the ups and downs of daily living, that's fine. If you get into a stuck place where you're feeling happy and it goes on for a long period of time, that's a time to seek help from a professional. But if we feel energetic, if we wake up in the morning happy that the day's there, we feel hopeful, we feel like we have social connection and we're not feeling lonely and isolated, that's probably all pretty good signs that we're flourishing.
You can have moments of flourishing within a day, I expect. And you can have moments where maybe you're not flourishing so much. I mean, one of the things that I did recently was of course, got all my holiday cheer decorations and whatnot, and and I have a bunch of those fancy light bulbs that have the flicker like a candle thing going on. And so I put those in a bunch of my lamps, and I turn those on, put on some nice music, and I get that feeling of hygge that we talk about. It's kind of a Danish philosophy of just finding that just inner peace in those moments.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's for 20 minutes, but it's a thing that...
And those 20 minutes can help. And that's one of the things like when I didn't mention earlier, do a training for people who are direct support workers about taking care of themselves and being well. I should have mentioned that earlier because it's an important part of what I do. It's important to me to do that class. And we really talk about that a lot of people who are direct support workers might be caring for a family member. So then it's sort of an on all the time kind of situation. You're always working. Or people work multiple jobs, and so it's hard to find time for that. And so it's important for me that people get the message that even taking 5 minutes for yourself can make can really help and make a big difference. That it's people need to give themselves permission to do that. That it's okay to take care of yourself, and you need to do that so that you stay healthy, and also you can provide better supports if you're taking care of yourself.
So that's kind of speaking to the why DSP should find it important.
Yeah.
So what does research say about direct support and well-being?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. Colleagues of ours here at the Institute on Community Integration did a series of surveys of direct support workers across the United States over the past few years of the pandemic. They did actually 4 surveys. And a lot of direct support workers are really struggling. There's a lot of people who are feeling very stressed and burned out and no longer love the work that they do. They're not having a good work-life balance, and that work is completely taking over their lives to the point where they can't take care of themselves or their family. And so it's a workforce that's really struggling and in crisis. And certainly there was some of that before the pandemic, but it worsened over the pandemic. And so figuring out how we can support direct support workers to be resilient and to manage their stress is important. And, but in the long term, we need to fix the under systematic issues. But that's a different conversation. But it's not been an easy few years for people, but who provide direct support work. A lot happened over the past few years that added to the stress that was already going on in a profession that is really, really important and usually undervalued.
Well, and hearing you talk about the actual policy changes that need to be made makes me think about, that's one of the things that I also would say that I've done at a time, but now I'm kind of passing the torch on that, and that is taking and being someone that is working in the field and is approaching those policymakers. That was part of my wellness for a good part of my life, was trying to make a difference. Now, sometimes when you're talking about policy and big policy like that, it takes years and years and years, so you have to be ready for the long haul.
Absolutely.
But maybe that's something that's a part of somebody's wellness.
Absolutely.
Is to say, I'm going to make the change. I'm going to be the person that pushes that change in my neck of the woods, within my organization, within my particular area of service. It can be at any level. But just making the changes that make wellness a part of things. So.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because feeling like you have control is an important part of resilience and wellness. And so being active and an advocate is a really good way to sort of build wellness and flourishing and being resilient, because you're taking action on something that hopefully will improve over time. Even if it's just going to your elected officials and telling your story. Stories matter. They listen to stories of constituents more than they listen to statistics from researchers. So always, sharing your story.
Yeah, in my policy work, that's always been the case. You have a good story that's got a hook, line, and a sinker that gets them to kind of want to support you. Yeah. But then you back it up with that research that's there. So that's the way that you can get folks to kind of listen a little bit more. So we could go into a whole podcast on that itself.
Yeah, that's right.
And we won't spend the time today because we're focusing on wellness and flourishing.
That's right. That's right.
Why is self-care important? And you may want to define self-care
Sure.
for us a little bit.
I think self-care is the things that we do for ourselves. And so it is the actions and thoughts and choices that we make regarding our own well-being. Our brain is an amazingly plastic organ, and so we can retrain it to do things differently and think differently. It's not hard. It's hard work. It takes a lot of work to do that, but it can happen. So self-care is doing those things that sort of teach our brain how to manage stress better, how we might move our bodies in ways that enjoy ourselves on a regular basis. And so it is things about making sure you get enough sleep, taking care of your physical health by getting those doctor's appointments and preventives and care done, and which can be difficult when you don't have a lot of time or if you don't have good insurance. I recognize that. Making sure that we maintain social connections with people, and thinking about our food choices, and how if they're supporting us in a way in terms of being healthier or not. And sometimes, food it's not just for physical reasons like hunger, but sometimes food has other purposes. It's a social thing. It can be a comforting thing. And so just thinking about, why we're eating what we're eating and if it's helping us move forward in the goals that we want.
There's a whole psychology connected to food.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's one of those things that I think I contemplate every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, why am I choosing to eat this when I've got this here that's healthier?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? It's because I've had a really stressful day.
Yeah.
It's just I'm bottling it in that way, and that's one of the things that I work on to try and make the more healthy choice in those situations. Although I don't beat myself up if I don't.
And sometimes it's okay to pick the comfort food.
Right.
It's fine. Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think that our wellness, a lot of the folks that are providing wellness ideas that aren't providing it research-based are oftentimes it's all about what they think.
Yeah.
And what they think is, you have to do.
Yeah.
And it's not a have to, it's not a shoulda.
Yeah.
We don't should on people.
Yeah.
It's okay. What do you need in this moment?
Right.
When you're at a better place, what might you do differently?
Right.
And you can think about it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things. So, all right. So we've got you here.
Yeah.
You've given us an opportunity to learn a little bit about wellness and flourishing.
Sure.
What are some simple and quick ways for direct support folks to care for themselves?
Sure. I'm going to talk a little bit about mindfulness first. Mindfulness has a lot of research behind it. Mindfulness is not meditation, so I'm not telling you to sit on a cushion and silently for an hour. For some of us, that would be an unpleasant experience.
That would be H-E double toothpicks is what you're telling me?
Yeah, but for some people that works for them and do it. Really, mindfulness just means bringing your mind and focusing on the present in whatever you're doing. So you can be mindful in all kinds of ways. You can do mindful walking where you focus on your footsteps and the sounds and things you hear. You can do mindful dishes and pay close attention to the actions of doing the dishes. There's all kinds of ways of being mindful. And sometimes just sitting with yourself and just focusing on your breathing in and out is a way of being mindful, but it really is a way to stop worrying about the past and stop worrying about the future and just really focus on what's going on in your life right now. And thinking about being mindful when you're with other people is helpful in relationships, and you can get closer to people and you can understand the people you support better. There's all sorts of resources out there about mindfulness and its benefits, and there's been a lot of research about its benefits in terms of our brain health and our stress and mental health. It's a powerful tool that's actually fairly easy. And if you want to, Mark, we can do an activity right now if you want to.
Let's do one. I think that would be fun.
Okay, this one's really, really simple. Just get comfortable. Open your eyes or close your eyes, whichever works for you. And just take a couple deep breaths, the kind that sort of fills your abdomen, your stomach up, and just do that a couple times.
And the old singer in me says, breathe from the diaphragm.
Breathe from the diaphragm, that's right. Okay. I would like you to think of 5 things that you can see. I would like you to think of 4 things that you can hear. 3 things that you can touch. 2 things that you can smell. And 1 thing that you can taste. And so it's called a grounding activity. It's a very simple way of sort of pulling your brain back into thinking about where you are right now and focusing on the now. It's one of those things that's really straightforward and simple that you can teach the people you support to do also. And it's good to practice these things when you're feeling calm. And so then you remember it when you're feeling stressed. If you just only practice it when you're feeling stressed or the person you support is feeling stressed, you won't remember it.
Well, and for those of you that are out there, I just want to say that in doing that, as Linda talked me through that, one of the things that happened is I could feel myself, all of a sudden my muscles loosened a little bit. I was less tense. I started breathing more gently and smoothly. And if I were to take that for a little bit longer and just sit and do those breaths for a while, it would have really calmed me even more. I could feel how that actually made that happen. And what I love about it is it's really quick.
Yeah, it's really quick. It's something you can do in a minute. You can, before you get out of your car, if you're going to a stressful meeting or just anything. I think the other interesting part of the breathing is that how we breathe can affect our heart rate. So when we're feeling anxious, our heart will beat faster. So if we slow down our breathing, it automatically also slows down our heart rate, which can help us feel a little less anxious about situations.
You've talked about nutrition, social support, and the importance. One thing on here that we really haven't touched upon yet is the importance of sleep.
Sleep is really important. If there is, maybe other than physical activity, if the other thing that I can encourage people to really think about is improving your sleep. And there's all kinds of things you could do. Dimming the lights before you go to bed, getting rid of the screen time before, give your brain some time to unwind from the stimulation of the screens. People sleep better in cooler rooms than in hot rooms. Some people might benefit from sleep masks or earplugs to sleep better. It is really hard if you're a shift worker to have good sleep. Shift work fights our body's natural rhythms. And so for people who do direct support, who work overnights, for example, it's going to be a bigger struggle for you, and it may be something that you want to talk to a healthcare provider about in terms of help with that. But our body needs sleep. Our brains function better when we've had enough. But sleep is the time when our bodies kind of repair itself and clean out the garbage, and so it's really, really important. But it doesn't. Everybody needs different amounts of sleep, though, and so the range is sort of 7 to 9 hours is the typical range for people. And so generally, if you fall in that, you're probably doing fine. Some people need more, some people need less sleep. If you're not sleeping well and it's an ongoing issue, it's something to talk to a healthcare provider about. There are some things that over the counter that works for people, but I would, again, talk to somebody who's a medical expert and not me. But for some people, melatonin works well for sleep. For me, I have a lifelong problem with insomnia, and for me, magnesium is the magic thing that helps me sleep. If I'm not taking my magnesium, I don't sleep as well. But that's a tricky one because if you take too much of it, you have gastrointestinal side effects. so you want to manage that carefully.
A bit of a balance thing you got to do there with that one.
But so I just really sleep is really important, and so if you can figure out how to make that happen in your life, I know it can be hard. That's a really good thing. And then the other thing I think that studies show, without question, is that human beings need social support, and that having a support system is critical to being mentally and physically healthy. People who are socially isolated have poor health outcomes in terms of physical and mental health. And so however you can think about to build social support into your life, it's really important. It doesn't mean you have to have 700 friends. Like for some people, having one or two solid people is what they want and need, and that's great. But having somebody who cares about you and who you care about in your life, however that looks, is really important to being well and to flourishing. Support groups can work for people. Finding activities with people that have same interests as you is one way to get that support. If you're careful about it, I mean, there's also online opportunities to connect with people. Zoom has helped with that, for the past few years.
Well, I think that's one of the things, and I was just thinking of that.
Yeah.
It's like when we ran into the COVID thing and it hit us so hard.
Yeah.
I know I was a part of multiple groups where we would get together and we on a Friday night we'd have our little happy hour where we'd all get together. We'd pour ourselves a drink of whatever we wanted to drink, whether it was coffee or a beer or whatever.
Yeah.
And a glass of wine, and we would just sit and chat for about an hour.
Yeah.
And just be there for each other in that way. And it didn't last the entire COVID run, but initially it was really a good way for us to keep connected.
And it got you through that first part of the pandemic. We didn't really know what was going on. It was a little stressful. Yeah.
Right, and so that was one of those things where, okay, that was kind of, worth doing, setting that up.
Yeah.
I still have people to this day that were a part of that would say, I really liked it when we did that. I did too, but, it was just suddenly people started dropping off. And then so it's like, okay,
we're done now.
We're done now, yeah.
It served its purpose. And,
Yep. And that's okay.
Yeah, and that is okay.
But yes, that whole social support thing, that's another thing that I talk about with when I got into the theater thing, was that I found families, basically.
Yeah.
Each time I did a show, we were together, every evening until we started our run.
Yeah.
And so it really became almost like a family.
Yeah.
And you take away good relationships and friends from that. So find those interests, because your interests are the things that will help you find people that will probably be in your life for a long time.
Absolutely. There's some other things that people can do that are really simple. Again, don't take a lot of time, but have proven benefits that people who research these things have found. And they research these things they do surveys, like asking you how you feel before and after, but also they look at how the brain is going. So practicing gratitude. And so every day writing down, well, not every day. Actually, the research shows that if you don't do this every day, just multiple days a week, it actually works better. But writing down things that are good from your day, and it can be really tiny. Like if it was a rough day, like, the sun was pretty today. It doesn't have to be anything earth-shattering. Or sending thank you notes or thank you emails to people. Those kinds of things are helpful. Having a spiritual practice can be important if you have a faith tradition. That can be really helpful in wellness and flourishing, or finding some other way to meet that need. For some people, it's nature. And another thing is there's two things that are interesting, and that are popping up in the research that interest me. The first is awe. So like experiencing awe, which is sort of that feeling of wonder and amazement. So if you watch a beautiful sunset over a lake, or you go to the Grand Canyon, that feeling of like there's just something out there that's so beautiful and powerful, and awe can help us feel better, which is an interesting. And then savoring things, just really slowing down and enjoying whatever you're doing. So taking time and actually eating your food in a way that you're tasting it, not just wolfing it down. If you're spending time with someone you care about, put your phones away for a little bit. And it's hard. And just savor the time you're spending together, because you don't know when you'll see each other again. And it's just a good practice in terms of just life will feel better if you take time to enjoy even the simple things. It doesn't have to be any earth-shattering thing. The walk to your car was lovely today because the sun was out and the breeze was blowing, and just experience that and savor it. Those are other really simple things that you can do while you're doing your other things that can help build that resilience and flourishing and feeling like life is going well for us.
Well, one of the things that I've run into is we are not the best, and this is most of us, are not the best at giving ourselves positive self-talk.
Yes.
We tend to focus on our negative self-talk.
Absolutely.
And for every one thing that we will say good about ourselves, or we will think good about ourselves, we're going to be saying or thinking 10 things that aren't so good about ourselves.
Yes.
We need to flip that script.
Yeah.
Let's get it to at least half and half.
Yeah.
I'd love to get it to other.
Yeah.
Where it's the predominant. We look at the positive, but it's so hard.
It is hard.
And it's one of those things that we all struggle with.
Yep.
But just remember, you can always look for the positive in what you've done. Like, okay, well, that happened, but what did I learn?
Yeah. Yeah.
What will I do different next time?
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. And you can sometimes improve your
Absolutely.
wellness that way. So
We're very unkind to ourselves.
yeah.
And that's hard. It is. You're right. It is a hard thing to break.
All right. We're coming to the end of our
Okay.
time today. So I would like do you have one final thought that you'd like to give folks?
I have one final thought. These are all great ideas. They can help us. They work. But if you're really struggling, therapy's okay. It's okay to get therapy. And maybe that's what you need in your life right now. And so check that out. And if you don't want to go places, there's online places you can do it now. And that's also an important part of taking care of ourselves is recognizing, just as if our physical health wasn't good, that we would go to a healthcare provider who takes care of physical things. If we're struggling with our mental health, that getting therapy might be the answer that would make things work better for you.
Well, and it might be one of the things that just helps you get to that better place just that much quicker.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us. We have many great topics lined up to look forward to, and we look forward to talking with you again. Tune in for our future episodes about building resilience and taking care of your mental health. Episodes are available on your favorite podcast streaming services. If you have ideas for topics that you would like to discuss, send an email to dspwellness, all small letters, again, dspwellness@umn.edu. And share with us what you'd like us to talk about, because we'll be able to look at what you guys are all concerned about. That's what we want to do. We want to bring wellness to you. This podcast is produced by the University of Minnesota Institute on Community Integration, and it is made by and for direct support professionals.